time for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning. Let's bring in a RISE analyst, Constance Ikwoku. Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Good morning, Yolanda.
Lovely to see you today.
Lovely to see you. And Charles, too, how are you today?
Fine, thank you, Dr. Constance. And you're yet to remark on our black combination. You always remember colors.
You know, I almost said about it. I shouldn't be talking about that all the time, but anyway, yes, it's black again. Yeah. I am in pink, so I'm glad to be brighter
You're
today.
You're always the standout factor of the show.
Thank you. Good to see you both. Okay, to look at the papers readers, this morning we have Ben Sherman. He is a former director of news at Voice of Nigeria. Hello there and welcome to a program we'll begin with this day. In this day today, we have Kaduna government lashes out at El-Rufai over false claim on projects inaugurated by Tinubu. Former governor of the state, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, had claimed that the projects recently commissioned by the president were initiated by his administration and had reached 90% completion by the end of his tenure. But an aide to the current governor, Obasani, countered, saying this is a distortion of the truth. The aide said 3 major projects commissioned were entirely new. Also, the specialist hospital, he said, was conceived by former Vice President Namadi Sambo, who was governor before he left to join the presidential ticket. I don't know, this first seems needless. Whether new or old projects, government is a continuum. And it's actually a mark of political maturity that successive governments continue with the blueprint of their predecessors. But beyond this, the bigger issue here is purely political, as El-Rufai has publicly voiced his anger, saying that Obasani is working with National Security Advisor Malam Nuhu Ribadu to tarnish his reputation ahead of 2031. That's what this is about, a clash of political ambitions, isn't it, Ben?
Well, I think that El-Rufai really does not run short of controversies here and there in terms of trying to situate his position politically. Because if projects were commissioned by the president and they are for the good of the Kaduna people or Nigeria in general, I don't think there's need for any political misgivings over that. But I do know that if you go to Kafanchan now, when El-Rufai was governor, he ensured Buhari went to Kafanchan to commission a road that was just virtually a quarter way into construction, and people were wondering why such a haste. Now you have a governor who has come in, he's introducing new buses, new transportation system, where you also have youths to be trained, and all of this established during this Governor Obasani's time. Now El-Rufai is laying claim to all of that. I think that he's just looking for some political relevance here and there, and it does not hold water at all.
Well, former foes now, former friends, yeah. Now foes, all because of political ambitions. I mean, let's look at another political story in the Punch newspaper. 2031 presidency, Tinubu's successor tussle fuels 2027 VP slot battle. No fewer than 4 northern governors and 2 principal officers of the 10th National Assembly are reportedly eyeing the VP seat. This battle stems from a bigger war of who succeeds the president in 2031, and not just about who becomes a VP. They now, they know that the APC is returning power to the north in 2031, hence the VP stands an edge in the power game over other candidates. This permutation makes sense. They're playing the long game, but it may be too early to make a call. It's just high-stakes game here, Ben.
Honestly, this is high-tension political game in the country. And at the point, some people want to, push the current Vice President Shetima into oblivion, very obscure position. But you see, it's an attempt to also knock their heads, the president and the vice president. And why is it that today people are being touted, they want to take over from the current vice president? You've been hearing of Nuhu Ribadu is there. At the point they said the current or sitting governor of Borno State has an eye on the seat. You're talking about even the current chairman of the APC. The names are being touted here and there. So people are wondering. So in the end, I think that it doesn't augur well for even APC. They should learn from PDP when such rumors were coming on board between Atiku and Obasanjo. In the end, you could see that governance was just simply abandoned. In the end, we were talking of who, I mean, should Tinubu, should Obasanjo work with Atiku? At the end, you don't see service delivery. What they call dividends of democracy was simply abandoned. And I think that APC, they should have seen that the mistakes of the PDP should be a very big A-level, advanced level in terms of politics to learn from such a mistake. Together they came as a ticket, together they came as a team, and well, it's left for them, just like the presidency said, it falls within the purview of the president to choose whoever he wants to run with. But to me, it's too early for us to begin to see this kind of bickering here and there.
Politics is actually never too early for anything, particularly when it comes to the next cycle of elections. Right after the elections in 2023, I guess about 6 months down the line, some people had actually started campaigning for a second term for the president. So in Nigerian politics, I just get that distinct impression that most of the time the focus is only on elections and most probably getting re-elected for another term, particularly when someone is elected for the first term. So, I mean, yes, it's distracting, but then I think it's perfectly normal.
Going on to the Constitution review, we have New Telegraph newspaper. Ongoing Constitution revenue exercise in futility, says Sage. The legal scholar, Professor Ishe Sage, based his opinion on previous failed attempts at amending the 1999 Constitution. Sage said, and I quote, "They are not serious people," that's referring to the National Assembly members. "They have never introduced any relevant thing in the Constitution. They don't achieve anything. They make all sorts of noise, spend all our money hiring hotels in some states where they enjoy themselves. Nothing is going to happen. Absolutely nothing." Wow. What a stinging comment, Ben, to the extent that, I mean, to an extent he's correct, because so much money is expended under each government trying to amend the Constitution. At the end of that tenure, we come out with very little to show for that.
I agree with Sagi this time around. But again, when you also look at the way and manner in which the state governors have even pocketed the state assemblies. Mark you, any bill that is supposed to be, any portion that is supposed to be tinkered with or changed or amended has to go to all these the state assemblies. And you realize that the governors are always pocketing the lawmakers at the point it is what the governor wants that will come out to be. So you can imagine, let's say, a situation like in Akwa Ibom State. It is just where the governor would want that the lawmakers will simply pay attention to. And yes, we've seen that they've always been having this kind of intentions to tinker with the Constitution. But truly, you don't get a substance, you don't get to see what really they've produced in terms of amending the Nigerian Constitution. And mark you, it's always said that it's too complicated and complex to be changed easily. And that's why it has to leave Abuja and go to all the states. And at the states, people will begin to look at them, even at committee level. That is cumbersome. And yes, I think Sage at the point is right. And when you look at how much is being spent in terms of amending the Constitution or intended to amend, you don't get any amendment being done. So it's a serious thing.
Was it during President Obasanjo that it was almost amended? At the end of the day, it was completely thrown out. So all the work that was done, you know, both some of the bills that were good and the others that were contentious. Everything was thrown out. There was also the issue of creating more states. Again, we have gone back to creating more states, and according to Sage, there's no need to create more states because most of these states can barely stand on their own. Complicated issues, but at the end of the day, our constitution is still a document that a lot of people feel like it's not what it should be and should be tinkered with. So how will this be successful? It's still a document that needs to be looked at, to be reviewed, and to be changed in the interest of the people. Let's move on to Daily Independent. Again, the Senate extends 2024 budget implementation till December. This is happening for a second time, and we've been told that this is to allow the federal government to complete ongoing projects. But it's also reported that the government does not have enough resources to capture the expenditures proposed in the budget. So an extension is requested to avoid abandoned projects in the 2024 budget. So we're now operating two budgets actually within a single fiscal year, the 2024 and the 2025 budget. Yolanda, if you want to come in here. I mean, there are criticisms against the National Assembly because seemingly they are in line with this, but running two budgets within a year.
You know, earlier when we were taking this report, Charles and I were discussing this issue, and it was music to my ears, literally, because I was shocked that we're actually discussing the budget for 2024. And, you know, it brings about a lot of questions, you know, these repeated extensions. What do they mean? Do they indicate challenges in the budget execution, or is it accountability challenges? You know, it leaves a lot to think about.
You know, at that point, I was wondering, are we talking about the 2025 budget or the 2024 budget? Did we get our figures mixed up somewhere? And then, well, it did dawn on me that it was the 2024 budget we were talking about. And I was like, I thought I understood how Nigeria's budget works. Now, I realize that I am completely at a loss. Because I believe that, you know, before the 2025 budget came into operation, everything about the 2024 budget had been tidied up. All the monies that needed to be returned were returned, or whatever that needed to be spent had been spent. And so we needed another fiscal plan for the year we are in now. But we're still operating the budget of the previous year. I mean, two budgets side by side. I mean, for me, it's absolutely confusing. But, well,
and when viewed against the background of all the political battles we're having,
absolutely,
people were like, you need to focus on work.
It's bewildering.
Exactly. What is also alarming is the fact that the deadline has now been pushed to December 2025. So we will now be discussing the 2024 budget as well as the 2025 in 2026. So it's a lot to consider.
Yeah, let's see Daily Sun. PDP, we had a good meeting with INEC, says Damagu. That story also featured in New Telegraph, where the headline said 2027 opposition still in disarray as PDP INEC meeting ends in deadlock. But the national chairman seems to say that all is well. The issues at stake are the party's national secretary and the position of the INEC concerning the National Executive Committee meeting scheduled for end of month. Ben, the PDP seems inconsistent and utterly confused, it seems, because according to INEC, they keep giving them various names, and then this letter that was sent to INEC had no signature of a secretary because, of course, they still haven't completely closed that chapter.
That this is a legal requirement. How will you send a document it is not signed? There are some other documents that require the chairman, national chairman, and the secretary to sign. You just see one signature. That makes it a nullity. And at the point, you could see that the publicity secretary at the point said the convention would take place whether INEC liked it or not. And you see, one was taken aback. Was he speaking for the party, or it was an individual opinion? And that was why you could see Umar Damagum disowning him publicly. But time has come to that. PDP should just learn to get its act together. In terms of conflict resolution mechanism, what are they putting on ground? It's just not this usual blame game. No, the government has sent some infiltrators into the ranks of the party, and that's why they are not getting it right. I think PDP should try and get it right, and the time to get it right is now. Also, if, as they were going to do the meeting, you could see that they said, no, it was going to be private. The media could just do some shots and go out, and thereafter they would address the press. But again, there are still issues on ground that PDP will have to settle. Issue of secretary, issue of getting it right with INEC, and following the due process, following the laws as spelled out.
Okay, leadership newspaper, crisis hits SDP as party suspends national chairman, auditor, youth leader, others. Then moving on to the Vanguard newspaper. Here, 2 appropriations in 1 year. We just spoke about that. Experts react as NAS okays rollover of 2024 budget till December 2025. And then finally on that front page, police arrest 48 over Benue massacre, Plateau killings. Then also the Guardian newspaper. Here, project funding execution stall over poor budget implementation. Still talking about the budget there. FG Lagos Ekiti to check obstacles hindering ease of doing business. Very important. Fresh PDP, LP defections to APC as opposition parties battle internal crisis. We'll be moving on to the international headlines from there. Daily Graphic, Africa needs more internal trade. This is coming from King Swati III, the leader of the Kingdom of Eswatini, as he met with Ghanaian President John Mahama. Yolanda, this is the future of Africa, and that's what the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is about, intra-African trade. It currently stands at 14% compared to 55% in Asia and over 70% in Europe. Can you imagine, what level will be if we're doing even 50%? Even 40.
It would be wonderful. And these are more of the conversations that we need to continue having and actually implementing. This is what Africa needs at the moment, for all of us to work together and have this economic integration amongst our countries. These trade barriers that we have, even looking at how difficult it is, how expensive it is to travel from one country in Africa to the other. It takes either a very long time to do so, or it's highly expensive as compared to other countries around the world. And this sustainable development avenue is also what we need, because this increased trade can contribute to making our economies better. So I look forward to more of these conversations, and I hope more African leaders can start to not just entertain the idea, but to implement policies as well.
All right, policies are ongoing, so it's a slow move, but I think we're doing something
in the right direction. Yes.
The Citizen newspaper, knives out for Joburg mayor. Dada Morero faces a motion of no confidence in the Joburg Council today and tomorrow. Several people from outside the DA want the mayor removed. So this is a DA coalition-led revolt, arguing the economic heart of SA is falling apart under the current leadership. This seat seems to be hard because, Dada Morero took over from another ousted mayor in 2022. Yolanda, if you want to have a quick comment here. So,
my comment here is actually on the headline, knives out for Joburg mayor. I find that a little bit ironic because Johannesburg has one of the highest, knife crimes. And so to have a headline like that, it's a bit jarring. But moving on, because it's very much so a political story, these politics happen. We're having this as well in Nigeria, and we wait and see what the DA has to offer, how they will, issue up a comeback in the light of things.
Yeah, whether he's removed or not.
Absolutely.
Whether he survives it. All right, Daily Star. Middle East crisis. They don't know what the F they are doing. Trump's F-bomb blast at Iran and Israel. This was shortly after an agreed ceasefire was broken. Ultimately, Israel partially got what it wanted, a bombing of Iran nuclear sites, and it successfully got the U.S. to do its dirty work. But as far as regime change is concerned, which was also on their agenda, President Trump has washed his hands completely off. Now we're seeing he's asking both countries to pull back from the brink. Ben, very quick comment, less than 30 seconds before we go.
Yes, this has left some dust, after all, after this ceasefire agreement. You could see that the lawmakers in America are divided as to whether it was successful or not. And CNN and others they got a leaked document that said that, look, what America did was just a mere kind of striking the target, and it just simply set Iran, in terms of nuclear development, to just some months, and not the kind of total obliteration that Donald Trump has been talking about. So, again, it, however, allowed peace to reign probably for now. It also allowed everybody to know what they call SWOT in terms of strength, weaknesses, and their abilities to face one another. Now you also have tested your arsenal. What range can they go? Minimum, maximum, and all that stuff. So they've known themselves now.
All right, Ben Shemang, former Director of News, Voice of Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much, Dr. Constance, for leading today's newspaper review. That's all we have time for here on Daybreak. I'm Charles El-Rufai. It's goodbye from me.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. Please do keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Bye-bye.